Hi, everyone. Larry Gordon here with our regularly scheduled podcast. And we are talking to you on Chanukah, December 25th. By way of context, you could be watching this, of course, at any future date. But we are here as we are on a regular basis of late. And our very special guest in the studio is the well-known Jewish leader, Rabbi Manis Friedman. He has been actually, he lived in Minnesota for close to a half a century, right? And ran a girls' school, not just any girls' school, but a Beis Chana girls' school, which was very unique and probably is what has led you to where you are today. But just by way of introduction, let me say that Rabbi Friedman, Manis, is a first cousin of mine. He is Benny Friedman's father and Avramo Fried's brother. And he's married to my first cousin, Chani. And so by way of introduction, we have full disclosure. We know what we're dealing with here. And, of course, welcome. It's great to have you here, and I'm glad you were able to join us. So you have a reputation internationally as being able to advise people on certain fundamental aspects of life. So by way of introduction, that expertise comes from where, let's say?
Well, first of all, it's very nice to be here at this family reunion.
Yes. We'll call it Chanukah. There's no donuts, no jelly donuts. Maybe later.
1970, we started this crash course on Judaism for women. And these are adult women. So obviously, naturally, the conversation always led to relationships, marriage, divorce, family. And for 50 years of this conversation, I learned a lot of things that we didn't appreciate in Yiddishkeit, the wisdom of it, the power of it, by seeing what's going on in the world and by hearing what people are suffering from. It's brilliant. It's hi chachmaschem ubinaschem.
So let me go out on a limb, and we were talking for a moment before we started recording. Let me go out on a limb and take it from there. There's a crisis in relationships. I hope you'll agree with me. I'm tiptoeing out on the limb. There's a crisis in relationships, which has resulted, amongst other things, in an international shidduch crisis in the Orthodox Jewish community. A really unbelievable amount of problems in married life and relationships between men and women before they're married, dating, and then following that, after that, throughout life. The emphasis is on keeping the sexes apart. Boys and girls, separate schools, of course, for educational reasons, not for any other reason. But so how do you reconcile? Was it compatible to keep everybody apart and then expect the relationships once they turn 20 or 22 or 25 to get on course almost automatically? How can we expect that? Is that realistic?
Good point. I'm not going to tiptoe. I'm going to say it, and we'll need to find the explanation and fill in the explanation. But let's get right to the point. The shidduch crisis is partly due to the thinking that men and women, boys and girls, the birds and the bees, it's all very natural and it's all very biological and so on. The marriage crisis, or the shidduch crisis, is that we're not thinking marriage. Just a very dramatic example. A woman says, I'm trying to get married. I've been looking to get married for years. Where are all the men? So I said to her, that's not nice. You can't marry all the men. She says, no, come on, I'm talking about a man. Mm-hmm. So you never met a man? She says, I mean somebody special. Never met anybody special? They happen to be married, but they're special. Mm-hmm. She says, I'm talking about the one for me.
Ah,
I said, look how far we just came.
right.
From all the men down to the one for me. And how do you call the one for me? That's called husband. You don't marry a man or a special man. You marry your husband. We don't, it's becoming, even in the most frum circles, dating has become an alternative lifestyle. You date until you find somebody special, you get excited, it works. It used to be, I got to get married. There's no dating. You meet somebody because you want to get married.
Well, let me interject. Let me say this about needing a shidduch. I think we've said that in previous programs where we broached the subject. Now you have people when they wish you well, they're wishing you maybe a person needs a refuah shlema and parnasa and a shidduch. How did the shidduch get caught between refuah shlema and needing parnasa? No one gives you a bracha on that you should learn how to breathe and eat. You know, these are natural parts of life. Am I wrong?
You know that joke about thank you for making this possible and thank you for making this necessary.
Yeah.
If you find a shidduch, then you're going to need parnasa.
Yeah.
and your health, you know.
But how did shidduchim get ensconced inside of needing a refuah shlema and a bracha and a job?
Because it's become a crisis.
How did that happen? What caused that?
Okay,
it wasn't always that way, was it?
No. One thing is that we get married later. Harder. Every year that goes by makes it harder. Getting married at 17 is easy. You're naive, you're idealistic, you got energy. As you get older, you get more settled into your lifestyle and you don't want to disrupt it. But also this thinking, when I meet somebody special, I'll get married. As if marriage is a byproduct. That's a problem. Marriage has to stand on its own. So one of the guilty parties is love.
Okay, so where does love come into the picture?
Love destroys everything.
Love destroys everything. You just destroyed all of Hollywood.
That's right. Right. See, if we love each other, we'll get married. So first of all, that means you don't really believe in marriage.
So you
believe in love.
Okay, but we assume love is a prelude to marriage.
Not necessarily.
Love and marriage, I think it goes
like a horse and carriage.
A horse and carriage. That was.
I think the horse and carriage go better than the.
Does it mean the horse and carriage is more natural than love and marriage?
They never argue.
So love and marriage don't necessarily have to go together.
Not at all. I really think love is destroying marriages, because let's put it bluntly, if a man says to a woman, "I want to marry you for your money,"
and she loves money.
She has money. He loves money.
Yeah, he loves money.
Yeah. He wants to marry her for her money. Why is that offensive? Because he's practically saying, can you just give me the money?
So it's like a bank robbery.
Do I have to marry you to get the money? Yes. Okay, I'll marry you. But really, it's the money. That's like telling the Eibishter, do I really have to keep all these mitzvahs? I just want to get to Gan Eden. Give me Gan Eden, limit it up. You know, why make things so complicated? No, there's no other way to get in Gan Eden. Okay, fine, I'll do the mitzvahs. It's offensive, right? You're marrying the money, not the person.
And a person that has no money, that gets married?
So why is love any better? I'm going to marry you for your money. I'm marrying you for love.
So you're saying love is a outside byproduct of a relationship. So what do you call a relationship between a man and a woman? What do you call that?
Marriage.
You call that marriage.
Right.
So if a boy and a girl go out, they're married.
They're looking.
It's a prelude to marriage.
Yeah. So what does it take? On what grounds do you decide? Yes, I'm marrying this person because you're in love. Here's another problem. A young couple come to me. They say, we're very much in love. We'd like to get married.
Okay.
Would you do the wedding for us? I said, you're in love? They said, yes. I said, so why bother getting married? You're getting married for love. You already have the love. What are you getting married for?
Well, isn't marriage a sequential part of an evolving relationship that starts with love? That's conventional wisdom.
That's conventional wisdom.
But you're saying the
But
boy.
your grandmother would have told you it's the opposite. Love is a byproduct of marriage.
So love. You're saying that there is love, but love comes after marriage. You're saying now.
Yes, and it's not a condition for marriage. In fact, it kills marriage if you put love first. Because as soon as the love goes out, there's no relationship at all. I was married to the love, and the love is gone. So who are you?
And this is a reason you think that there is a shidduch crisis, and this is a reason why there's an unusual amount of problems in marriages?
Yes. Yes.
So how do you address that?
So here's what the shocking thing that made me write the second book. People are suffering today, unprecedented. People are suffering a loneliness. It's a crisis in the world. Not only loneliness, aloneness, which is worse than loneliness. It was shocking to hear from couples who are happily married, what we call successfully married. They have no complaints, but they feel alone. If marriage doesn't take away that state of aloneness, then nothing will. So the Torah says, Al ken yaziv ishas oviv es imei. Leave your mother and father and become one with your spouse. With your mother and father, you're number 3. You're not number 1. Hopefully. Ideally, you're number 3. The only place where you are number 1 is in a marriage. So that's the first thing that happens when you walk out from under the chuppah is you're never going to be alone again, even if your spouse is across the ocean. So when I hear married people saying, I feel so alone, what's missing? What went wrong with marriage? And the answer is they're married to the money, they're married to the love, they're married to the intimacy, they're not married to each other.
So a successful marriage doesn't necessarily just doesn't need love, doesn't need money, doesn't need intimacy.
Right.
Can you have a successful marriage without those 3 things?
Yes.
And what is that called? Marriage?
Yes. It's called achdus. You become one.
Okay, what we've just done here is we've deconstructed the main ingredients of what the operating idea of what a successful marriage consists of. We took the 3, foundational aspects of it, and we just knocked them over.
Yeah. And you have to do that. If you see that marriages aren't working, you've got to assume that something is wrong with them. Something fundamental, by the way.
So you have men and women walking around these days, an inordinate number of men and women in their 30s, 40s, and even older, and saying they're waiting for their bashert. What is that?
I have no idea.
Is there such a thing?
How are you going to recognize?
Is there such a thing as a bashert?
Of course there is. But how are you supposed to know? Bashert means you are 2 halves of the same neshama.
So
How are you going to recognize the other half? You don't even know your half.
So every single young man or young woman walking around the age of, let's say, 30, 25 or 30, has a partner out there.
Yes.
So this is the ingredients of the crisis. How do they get to find them? How do they find them?
Well, ultimately, of course, it's all bashert. Not only who you marry, but when. The timing is also determined.
And if you never and if you never marry, also.
There's always an exception to every rule, but you don't consider yourself an exception. You assume that you're the norm. So how are we supposed to know whether someone is bashert or not? We don't know until after the marriage, after the wedding. When you find yourself married to someone, you know for sure that this is your bashert. But before that, all you have to know is that you want him to be your bashert. Then if you get married, he is. If you don't get married, he's not.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is you're advocating. It sounds to me like you're advocating the idea of, let's say, parents, for example. If you live at home and you're not alone, parents finding what they believe is the right partner for you, and the way a lot of the ways done in Meisharim or in even Williamsburg and parts of Borough Park, for example. The young man meets the young woman after the parents decided they're going to get married. Is that what you're suggesting is the right way to go?
That would be a wonderful idea if the boy and girl are 15.
15?
Yes.
Okay.
That's when it worked. Mm-hmm. When people got married at 15, 16, yes, of course the parents arranged it. But at 26, I don't think so.
So they have to date.
Yes.
They have to meet and they have to date.
But let's go mamish to the core of the whole question.
Okay.
Why are you getting married? Why?
That's a good question.
We never asked that question. It was just assumed.
Okay.
That's it.
Also steht in Torah.
Yeah, you're 18. You get married.
Right.
Because you're 18.
Okay, that's what's required of you. By mitzvah, you're 13. Yeah, 13-year by mitzvah, and so on and so forth. This is a milestone in one's life that one looks forward to their entire life.
But it's not a good answer. Say, why am I getting married? Yeah, I'm 18. No, that's not. Why do we get married? What is the tachlis? And so the Torah says, you leave your mother and father to become one. In today's modern language, to not be alone. Now, to not be alone involves another person. So imagine you meet somebody who has exactly the same tastes as you, exactly the same opinion as you, the same hashkafa, the same lifestyle, you like the same foods, you like the same music. You're still alone because you married a clone. To not be alone, there has to be someone other than you in your life. And here's what happens.
Okay.
We get married because of what we like in each other, what we're comfortable with in each other. But anything you don't agree with me, I don't want. Any taste you have that is not my taste, I don't want to put up with this, which means I don't want you. I just want the things I like.
So the differences are the necessary components of a marriage. Is that what you're saying?
That's the part you need.
So if women and men are looking for people like them, that's the obstacle to getting a successful couple together.
So you listen to people arguing.
Right.
Why can't you be more like
so and so?
Or like my mother.
Yeah.
Or why do you have to be like your mother?
Yeah.
Why can't you be? So the first book that I published, the publisher gets to choose the title.
So let me just say, by way of introduction, that there's two books you published. Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore? That was a number of years ago, right?
1991.
Okay, quite a number of years ago. And more recently, The Joy of Intimacy.
So the publisher gets to choose the title.
Okay. Are you happy with the titles?
Yeah, they're good. Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore was a very popular title.
Okay.
But it was not my choice. My choice was, this is 1991.
Okay.
My choice was, Shut Up, I Love You.
Okay. They didn't like that.
And I said, shut up? No, too harsh.
Right.
They were so edel back then, I can imagine.
And The Joy of Intimacy, what was your working title?
No, that's fine.
That's fine?
Yeah. But Shut Up, I Love You tells you the whole problem. The whole problem is, I love you. Why do you have to have an opinion? If you would just not have an opinion, we would be so happily married. Now, to make it really dramatic and exciting, the Eibishter created the world because he was alone. He was Yochid.
That's why it says Yom Echad.
That's right.
He wants to be
Hashem
creation.
Echad, not Yochid. Okay. So he created the world not to be alone. But in order not to be alone, he has to give us bechira. If we can't disagree with him or completely reject him and ignore him and deny him, then he's still alone. So he's willing to give us bechira, which is a terrible thing, in order to not be alone.
So, I mean, are you saying the pursuit of peace is a wrong agenda item? You should be pursuing friction.
No, well, peace means the resolution of differences, but not the absence of differences. If we're not different, then we're alone. So, a good example.
So you're saying that? Let me just go over this so I understand it, and hopefully the people watching this and listening it will hear it again. Maybe be able to digest it a little bit more, a little healthier. You're saying that abachir is used to disagree or object to things that God has commanded of us, and by virtue of that type of relationship, he doesn't feel so alone, as opposed to us just being good little boys and girls and doing everything that we're supposed to do.
Which are the angels.
Okay.
And the angels doesn't solve the problem.
So friction and differences is healthy.
Independent will. Doesn't have to be friction. Even if you do a mitzvah, but you're doing it because you want to, then you're not him. So here's a good example. Your husband is out of town. Your wife is out of town. You miss her. So what do you miss about her? What do you mean, what do I miss? I miss her. Yeah, what? What do you miss? I miss her. She is not home. As soon as she walks in the door, it suddenly becomes about something. Oh, good, now you can take care of. But we know what it means to be connected to someone, putting all things aside. So I think a better word than love is mine.
M-I-N-E? Mine?
You're mine. I'm yours. That's such a powerful word. And
to belong to one another,
yes,
you're saying.
Yeah. So you're going to love each other. I'm all yeah, I'm all nicht. Depends on the mood. Love can't be fixed.
Love is a distraction.
It could be. It could be. If I want the love more than I want you.
Okay, that could be the fault of the novelists and the movie makers in Hollywood. There's a lot of things that have been, instilled in us by messages that we are bombarded with all our lives, and that we adapt as a fundamental aspect of reality.
Because it sells.
That comes back to the money, right?
Right.
The new book, the newer book, the last book, The Joy of Intimacy, it's subheaded A Soulful Guide to Love, Sexuality, and Marriage. Is that one thing? Are those three separate things? And what's the relationship between the three?
Here's the funny thing. The love and the sexuality are destroying the marriage.
Okay. Could you explain that a little bit? Okay. It's your book.
So the Mishnah says there's an ahava hatluya b'davar, a relationship that depends on something. It's not going to last. An ahava she'eina tluya b'davar will last forever. It turns out, ahava hatluya b'davar, that thing could be the love itself. The love itself can become the thing that ruins your relationship. And the same is true with sexuality. Love is a thing. You have it, you don't have it, you have more, you have less, it comes, it goes. You can't be married to a thing. And the same is true with sexuality. It's a thing. You do, you don't, you have, you don't. You got to be married to a person, not to something about that person. So as a bumper sticker, I'll make a bumper sticker saying, nothing about your wife can be more important than your wife. Is that radical? Is that crazy?
Well, the thought process, like I said a few minutes ago, is a little bit seems unconventional, contrary to what we're taught from a very young age. Yeah. So you're saying that marriage is something that it's a relationship. Is a relationship a good word? That's the essence of a marriage, is a relationship.
Yes.
A partnership.
A bond.
Let's call it a bond. I like that. Like I said before, belonging to one another.
Yes.
The love and the sexuality aspects of it are come and go, but they're distractions.
Commentary.
They wane.
And they should, because that's their nature. You can't love somebody permanently, constantly, at the same rate, at the same, because then it's not an emotion anymore.
All right, so let's go.
Fixation.
So let's go back to some of the problems that have created the shidduch crisis. Okay, I'm not attracted to him. I'm not attracted to her. That's an obstacle to shidduchim, which is adding to the problem? Is what, according to what you're saying?
Yes.
Does there have to be an attraction?
Yes, and there's something even worse.
If there's an attraction, attraction is a distraction.
What kind of attraction? That's the question. What's worse is a guy who says, I met a nice girl and we're going out. She's really, really nice. I said, so you're marrying her? He says, no. I said, why not? He said, because the next one could be better.
Well, he has to marry a girl. Nice could be a distraction too. She doesn't have to be nice.
Yeah, how long is she going to be nice?
I don't know. Right. And if she's not nice, she's not nice. You still belong to one another.
Yes. That's how our grandparents did it. They had each other. There were many things they didn't like about each other, but they had each other. So let me draw this little picture. The powerful word that is missing in our vocabulary is home.
Home?
Home, not love. When you come home, how is it supposed to feel? What is it? What does it mean to come home?
Comfortable, security.
Yes, it's where you belong. The rest of the world, you really belong there? Home is where you belong. What you do at home, that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Who are you doing it with? The one person that is meant for you. When you have these three ingredients, I'm where I belong, doing what I'm supposed to be doing with the person who is meant for me, that's heavenly.
Absolutely.
Put it even more personal terms. When I'm home, there's no place else I'd rather be. And what I do at home, there's nothing else I'd rather do. And who am I doing? Nobody else I'd rather be with. That is such a powerful, necessary ingredient that makes life worth living, right? Like, for example, I think this is really, I get emotional every time. When the soldiers came into the airport in Entebbe and eliminated the terrorists, what did they say to the hostages? And what could you say? They've been there for a long time. They didn't know whether they were going to survive or not. Now these guys come in, and what did they come in and say, we came here because we love you?
Right.
No.
They said we came to take you home, I think, right?
Let's go
home.
Oh, come on. That is so...
Absolutely. So you counsel people that are dating, and you also counsel people that are married and having the same crisis or questions, or
they're still dating each other
if they're married. So the dating never ends. Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Never ends until it ends. Right?
Until they date somebody else.
Well, do you advise people at any point when you're doing marriage counseling that this relationship is not, you guys are not at home, or one of you guys are not completely at home, and it's time to call it quits?
Yeah.
That's a viable alternative?
This is not leading to a marriage. And here's
what goes wrong? What could go wrong?
I'll tell you. A man marries a woman in order to be the mashpia. And a woman marries a man in order to be makabel. He has to be the giver. She has to be the receiver. These are not roles. These are identities. A male's greatest satisfaction comes when he feels like he's giving. And a woman's greatest satisfaction comes when she feels like she's receiving. So imagine a guy calls me up. He says, I'm going with this girl. She is incredible. She's so smart. She's so capable. She's so strong. I would follow her to the end of the world. I said, call it off. She doesn't want a wife. She wants a husband. A woman calls up and says, I'm going out with a guy. he is the sweetest, the nicest, the gentlest soul in there. Why am I hesitating to marry him? I said, because you'd rather adopt him.
But you're really what you're describing is what they would call today stereotypical roles.
Yes.
And
Because
our society is spending all the time trying to blend these roles.
Exactly. And we end up with a mush.
So it's
garnished. So here's the point. The good feeling, the good chemistry that convinces you to marry a person, right? You have to have feelings. But not, I'm excited about her. That doesn't prove anything. Or I'm excited about him. The good feeling you're looking for when you're dating somebody, how does that person make you feel about yourself? A guy is sitting with a woman and he feels really comfortable being a man.
Mm-hmm.
That's good chemistry. She is making you feel like a man. And he makes her feel like a woman. That's good chemistry. Not, am I excited about him? Is she bringing out the husband in him? Is he bringing out the wife in her? And part of the problem is, certainly in the secular world, and it's kind of creeping in, we would much rather remain man and woman than become husband and wife. There's no glamour in being a wife. And there's certainly no glamour in being a husband.
Listen, I have a friend that delivers babies in a hospital. He's a doctor. He delivers babies in a hospital, and he tells me that in the maternity ward, once you give birth, you fill out the forms. You have to check whether you're a male or female these days. I'm sure you've heard that or seen that. Well, I understand there's like 32 different choices you could possibly adapt as identifying.
Like Baskin-Robbins.
Yeah, but I think there's only 31? I think that Baskin-Robbins is 31 flavors, just not to mix it up. There's 32 here, so you're really fighting. It's like trying to make the falls of Niagara Falls flow up. It's not possible to do that.
That is a funny story. I was speaking someplace with a conference of rabbis. So they were Reform, conservative, bunch of, and we're talking about continuity, Jewish continuity. And they're all talking about all sorts of new developments. I said, wait a minute. We're talking continuity. Continuity means do what your grandfather did, what his grandfather did, and what his grandfather did. So the Reform rabbi says, how can you ignore half of the population? Why did you say grandfather? Why didn't you say grandmother?
Mm-hmm.
I said, you're so behind the times. My grandfather was a woman. How dare you assume that just because he was... You know the scary thing? She had nothing to say.
She had nothing to say.
It was like, yeah, what can you say? This is really crazy. I mean, this is going to pass. This can't.
Listen, there's dangerous things to even talk about because you're talking about political correctness.
Yes.
You've gotten in trouble before. Luckily today, trouble has like a 3-day shelf life. If you manage to stay alive after whatever trouble you get into, it has a 3 or 4 day maximum shelf life. So I don't remember the subject was, but you said something in reference to the spate of, I think, molestation cases, right? And you said something about, I think the fateful words were just get over it. Remember that? That was a few years ago.
Yes, yeah.
So,
all you have to do is apologize and say, I'm sorry you got hurt.
But you see, we're living in a time when through the legal process, they've done away with the statute of limitations on these situations that unfortunately existed.
Yep.
In the dark of night, so to speak, in the shadows, in yeshivas and summer camps, and in shuls and a lot of institutions. And now they opened up the statute of limitations, and they have a year now to sue people for a lot of money, and they may even bankrupt some of our institutions at some point.
It's terrible.
So, but these have impacted on people's lives. They haven't been able to lead normal lives for decades because of what happened to them. Mm-hmm. So this is why I probably ran into a little bit of a problem with that kind of flippant type of advice.
Yeah, because the attention right now, the focus right now is on how bad the problem is. We're not ready to talk about the solution yet. And I was talking about the solution. Which brings us to an interesting subject called Chanukah.
Okay.
What exactly is Chanukah? What are we celebrating? The miracle that the candle burned for 8 days. That's a yontif. Every yontif celebrates like freedom from slavery, saved from, in Purim, saved from genocide. And here we're celebrating that the candle burned.
Okay, sounds simple.
Yeah. The difference between Chanukah and Purim, and this is really, I think, essential piece of information. The difference between Chanukah and Purim is that Purim happened in Persia, not in our country. We were strangers. Chanukah happened in our country, not only in our country, but in our Beis HaMikdash. The holiest, most awesome space was invaded and contaminated, and the innocence was destroyed. We were violated in simple language. The question is there a way back? Can you recover from having your innocence? The miracle of Chanukah is that they didn't use the oil that was compromised, because they could have. They said, no, we're going back to our purest, most innocent self. They looked and they found it. That's the celebration. So you can say, Pesach, we celebrate surviving slavery. Purim, we celebrate surviving a threat of annihilation. Chanukah, we celebrate surviving invasion. When our holiest place is violated and we don't settle for second-class citizenship, we go back to our original innocence. Question is, how do you do that? But to say there's no way back, no, that can't be.
So what is that way back?
There's always that place within you that was never compromised. So it's not true your whole life was destroyed. That can't be. Go in a little deeper, find your truest self that no Yavan can touch, and light your menorah with that. And then it's not even a miracle that it'll last 8 days. It'll last forever.
So there's always hope. It's never hopeless, is what you're saying, I think.
You never quite lose your innocence.
So we have just a few minutes left. We're speaking with Rabbi Manis Friedman, the author of The Joy of Intimacy, his newest volume, and of the book Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore? So you're counseling, spending your time. First of all, you lived in Minnesota for, what, a half a century? 40 years, 50 years?
I still live there. I have an apartment now in Crown Heights.
But you spend most of your time in New York? Will you spend time in Minnesota, too?
I spend most of my time in airports. Always traveling. The question is, from where?
I understand. I hear what you're saying. So you're spending an inordinate amount, most of your time counseling young couples, people that are married, people that are dating. What is the emphasis? It's not.
I wouldn't call it marriage counseling. It's marriage hashkafa. If you get the right idea, if your head is on right, it'll work. It'll work. So, practical recommendation, pick on the calendar the day you want to be married. Mark it on your calendar, because your objective is marriage, not to meet a nice guy. If you really plan to be married, it's more likely that it's going to happen. But if you say, I want to get married, soon as I meet the right person, that can take forever.
So when you hear that a young man or a young woman is very picky, that means that it's not happening.
Actually, on that topic, there's no such thing as too picky, because if something makes you uncomfortable, do not overlook it. even if it's something silly and childish like a pimple. A guy says to me, it bothers me. She has that pimple. It's so ridiculous, so childish, it's so petty. I said, yeah, well, then you're petty. Don't do it. If a pimple bothers you, then that's who you are. It shouldn't bother you. That you should have taken care of when you were a teenager. Right now it bothers you, don't do it. Because it'll bother you more after you're married. So if something disturbs, and that's the reason, by the way, for going out. The reason for dating at all is to make sure that the things about her don't interfere. So you're not going to marry her for her looks, but you got to make sure that the looks don't bother you. Mm-hmm. You're not going to marry her for her sense of humor, but it might bother you if she doesn't have one. So you're checking out to see if it's okay with you. Everything's okay, then you marry her, not those things.
You want to see if there's anything missing that you deem to be essential, an essential ingredient that would, make you, unbalanced or unhappy, whatever the case may be.
So all these people who are saying they want to get married, sit down and ask yourself a question. What do you want marriage for? What do you think marriage is about? Focus in. Get the marriage to stand on its own, not a byproduct of love or of compatibility or security or anything else. Either marriage is a wonderful thing or don't do it.
The advice sounds almost too simple.
Yeah.
Sounds almost, we're looking for complicated solutions.
Yes.
And it could be that this formulation is so simple that we just pass it right by.
Yeah.
So we will flash your contact information on the screen here, and it's been great speaking with you and getting some of the insight into your approach to these issues. And it's all in the new book, The Joy of Intimacy, a soulful guide to love, sexuality, and marriage. And we've been talking with my first cousin, Rabbi Friedman, for the last few minutes. And I thank you for joining us. And we look forward to doing it again soon. Thank you very much.